I worked as a security guard at my daughter's fiancé's office building for 3 months before he ever once looked me in the eye. Not because I was hiding. I wore a uniform. I sat at the front desk every morning from 6 to 2. I signed in every contractor, every delivery driver, every executive who came through those glass doors. I handed out visitor badges. I said good morning to everyone who walked past. He just never saw me. That's the thing about men like him. People who carry bags, hold doors, sit behind desks. We're furniture to them, part of the building. You don't look at a chair. You don't say good morning to a revolving door. My name is Harold. I'm 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a mechanical engineer at a manufacturing plant outside of Hamilton, Ontario. When I retired 4 years ago, I thought I'd be fine with the quiet. And for about 6 months I was. I read. I took walks along the escarpment. I drove out to visit my sister in Guelph on Sundays. Then my wife passed. Carol died 18 months after I retired. Pancreatic cancer, fast and merciless. And after that, the quiet stopped being peaceful and started being something else entirely. My daughter, her name is Joanna. She worried about me. She called every day. She drove up from Toronto on weekends when she could. She's a good person, my daughter. She has her mother's way of knowing when something is wrong without you having to say a word. It was Joanna who suggested I try something part-time, not because we needed the money. My pension was fine. The mortgage was paid off years ago. She just thought it might help to have a reason to get dressed in the morning. She was right, though I didn't admit it at the time. A friend from the plant had a contact at a security company. They were looking for reliable people for daytime shifts at commercial buildings downtown. I figured I could handle sitting at a desk, checking IDs, watching a monitor. It wasn't complicated work, but it was steady, and the other guards were decent company. I started at the building on King Street West in early January. It's a mid-sized office tower, maybe 14 floors, home to a few law firms, a financial consulting group, a tech startup on the top floors. Professional crowd, nice building. The kind of place where everyone is in a hurry, and nobody spills their coffee. I'd been there about 3 weeks when I first saw him. He came in on a Wednesday morning, around 7:45, which was earlier than most. Sharp-looking young man, late 30s, dressed well. He had that particular walk that some men develop when they've been told. Often enough that they're impressive. Long strides, chin up, like every room is already waiting for him. He didn't stop at my desk. He went straight to the elevator, phone already out. I noticed him the way you notice anyone who doesn't follow the sign-in procedure. Not suspiciously, just professionally. He had a key fob for the elevator, so he was an employee or tenant. That was fine. His name, I learned from the building directory, was Brendan. He worked on the 9th floor with the financial consulting firm. Prestige Capital, they called themselves. Associate Director of Client Relations, according to his email signature, which I occasionally saw when he printed documents at the lobby printer and didn't collect them right away. I want to be honest about something. For the first few weeks, I had no reason to think anything of him. He was just a face in the building. One of dozens I saw every day. I didn't connect him to my daughter until the second week of February. Joanna called me on a Sunday, which was normal. But this time she had something different in her voice. A lightness I hadn't heard since before her mother got sick. She told me she'd been seeing someone serious for several months, and that she wanted me to meet him. She said his name was Brendan. She said he worked in finance in Toronto. She said he was kind and ambitious, and that she thought I would like him. I thought about the man on the 9th floor. Common name. Common enough profession. I didn't say anything. I just said I'd be happy to meet him and asked when she was thinking. She said maybe the following weekend. That Thursday I watched him more carefully. He came in at the same time, same walk, same phone-first entrance. I watched him cross the lobby and I tried to see what my daughters saw. He was handsome, I'll grant him that. Well-groomed, the kind of person who photographs well. He didn't look at me. When Joanna arrived at my house that Saturday with him beside her, my chest did something complicated. I'd been hoping quietly that it was a different Brendan. There are a lot of people in Toronto. The odds weren't in my favor, but a man can hope. It was him. I watched his face when Joanna introduced us. I watched for the flicker of recognition that never came. He shook my hand with a firm, practiced grip. He said it was great to finally meet me. He smiled. The way people smile when they want to make a good impression on someone they've already decided doesn't matter much. Not a flicker. I served them coffee and Carol's shortbread recipe, which I'd been slowly getting better at, and I listened to him talk. He was polished. He asked questions about my career, in a way that seemed interested but wasn't. The kind of questions that let him wait for his turn to speak. He mentioned his own work 3 times in the first 20 minutes without being asked. But Joanna smiled. She laughed at something. He said. She put her hand on his arm without thinking about it, the way you only do with someone you trust. I kept my face neutral. I told Joanna it was good to meet him. I said he seemed like a solid young man. She hugged me at the door longer than usual, and I knew she'd been nervous about this, and I knew she was relieved. After they left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time. I told myself, he just didn't recognize you. It happens. You're 63. You're in a uniform. You're behind a desk. People don't expect to see their girlfriend's father handing out visitor badges. It's not a moral failing. Give the man a chance. I gave him a chance. February became March. Brendan came into the building every weekday. He never once paused at my desk to say good morning. He never once showed any sign that the man in the security uniform was connected in any way to the woman he was planning to marry. I was a fixture, a background element. Some days that bothered me more than others. But what I was learning, in those morning hours, had nothing to do with whether he recognized me. It started with the phone calls. A lot of people take calls in the lobby while they wait for the elevator. The acoustics aren't great, so they tend to speak up. I learned very quickly to tune most of it out. It wasn't my business, and it wasn't interesting. Budget calls, scheduling calls, complaints about traffic. Brendan's calls were different. The first one I really paid attention to was a Thursday in early March. He was waiting for the elevator. There were 2 in the bank, and one was always slow. And he was on the phone with someone I gathered was a close friend, maybe a colleague from a previous job. He was talking about Calgary. The timing is right, he was saying. The opportunity at the Calgary office is real, and it closes in June. I need to move on this. I kept my eyes on the monitor in front of me. Yeah, she knows there's a possibility, he said. Then, after a pause, she knows I have ambitions. That's the same thing. The elevator arrived. He stepped in. I wrote nothing down. I had no reason to, yet. People consider career moves. People have conversations. It was one call. But the calls kept coming. The following week, he was on the phone in the lobby again, earlier than usual. A different call, different tone, more clipped, more professional. I heard fragments. Cost of living comparison. A neighborhood called Varsity in Northwest Calgary. Something about a school district. I thought that was an odd detail for a man without children to research. 2 days later, I heard him say, in the same lobby, in a quieter voice, "She'll adapt. She always does. She'll adapt. She always does. I've been married. I know what a partnership sounds like. I know what it sounds like when one person has already made the decision and is simply waiting for the right moment to inform the other. Those are 2 very different things." I started paying closer attention. Over the following 3 weeks, here is what I pieced together from fragments of lobby conversation. Brendan had been in active discussions with his firm's Calgary office since at least November, which was before Joanna told me they'd been dating seriously. Before the ring I'd heard mention of but not yet seen. He had attended what I gathered was a preliminary interview in January. The same month I started working in his building. He had a contact, someone named in one call as Rod from Acquisitions, who was facilitating his candidacy. He had already done at least one informal walkthrough of a rental property in a Calgary neighborhood. A walkthrough that I was quite certain Joanna knew nothing about. Because the call where he described it in the language of a solo reconnaissance. The second bedroom could be a home office, he told whoever was on the other end, until things settle. Until things settle. My daughter is a nurse practitioner. She has a position at a clinic in Mississauga she's worked toward for 8 years. She has colleagues there, patients who know her name, a professional reputation. that took real effort to build. Until things settle is not a sentence you say about a person you consider an equal partner. It is a sentence you say about a complication you intend to manage. I want to tell you that I picked up the phone and called Joanna that night. I want to tell you I was the kind of father who charged in and said what needed to be said. I didn't. I thought about it. I sat at the kitchen table, and I thought about my daughter's face when she introduced him to me. I thought about that hug at the door. I thought about the way she laughed at his jokes. And I thought about Carol. When Joanna was 22, she was dating a young man her mother and I both had reservations about. Carol wanted to say something. I was the one who said wait. I said, if we push, she digs in. Let her see it herself. Carol thought I was wrong. She was usually right about these things and I was usually wrong. But this time I hope I was right. Because within 4 months, Joanna ended that relationship herself, on her own terms. And she never once had to feel like her parents had taken something from her. Carol wasn't here to tell me what to do this time. So I went back to what I knew. I waited. I watched. I listened. By the time April arrived, I had a fairly complete picture. Brendan had accepted, or was very close to accepting, a position in Calgary. He had a moving timeline in mind, sometime in late summer, which would mean Joanna would need to give notice at her clinic by June at the latest. He had looked at 2-bedroom apartments. He had spoken to someone about RRSP contribution strategies for a combined household income, which suggested he had done financial projections that included Joanna's salary, without, as far as I could tell, her knowledge or consent. He was building a life and slotting my daughter into it, not building a life with her. The question was still the same. How do I tell her? I still didn't have a good answer. And then Brendan did something that helped me find one. In the second week of April, Joanna called to tell me that Brendan had booked a table at a restaurant called Auberge du Pommier for a Saturday evening, which she said was the nicest restaurant he'd ever taken her to, and her voice had that particular quality of a woman who suspects what she's being taken to a nice restaurant for. She was right. He proposed that Saturday. She said yes. She called me from outside the restaurant, still in her coat, laughing and crying at the same time, and I said all the right things. I said I was so happy for her. I said her mother would have been over the moon. I said we needed to celebrate. I hung up and sat with that for a long time. 3 days later, standing in the lobby of his building at 7:48 in the morning, I watched the man my daughter had just agreed to marry get off his phone, pocket it, and walk past my desk without looking up. And I made a decision. I was not going to tell Joanna what I knew. I was going to give Brendan the chance to tell her himself. Joanna called me that Friday evening to talk about engagement party ideas. She was thinking something low-key, maybe a backyard thing at her place or a private room at a restaurant. Something in May, before the summer got busy. She mentioned that Brendan's parents would fly in from Vancouver. She mentioned that she was thinking about flowers and whether that was too formal. I mentioned as gently as I could that an engagement party sounded like a wonderful time to talk about the future, about plans, about where the two of them saw themselves in the next year or two. She said, a little carefully, that they'd been talking about it. I said that was good. I said that knowing where you're both headed together, making those decisions together, was one of the most important things. She said she knew that, Dad. I said I was sure she did. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Is there something you want to tell me? She asked. I just want you to be happy, I said. And I want him to deserve you. She was quiet. Then she said, he does. I hoped she was right. The party was on a Sunday in early May, at the backyard of a friend of Joanna's, who had a larger property out in Oakville. About 40 people, string lights, a catered spread, the smell of cut grass and someone's citronella candle. Brendan's parents had arrived the day before. His father was a retired civil servant, his mother a former school principal. Perfectly pleasant people who shook my hand warmly and said they'd heard so much about me. I wore a button-down shirt and my good jacket. I had a glass of white wine I barely touched. I talked to Joanna's friends and her colleagues and a woman from next door who had apparently known Carol, and who squeezed my arm and said she could see Carol in Joanna's smile. That nearly undid me. I watched Brendan work the party. He was good at it. He was warm and engaging, and he laughed at the right moments. He refilled glasses without being asked. He put his arm around Joanna and kissed her temple, and she leaned into him in a way that made my chest hurt. I waited. After the food, Joanna's friend made a little speech. Then Brendan's father made a lovely, brief toast. Then Joanna turned to me, because of course she did, and asked if I wanted to say a few words. I stood up. I thanked everyone for coming. I said something about Joanna that was true, that she was the best of everything Carol and I had tried to be. I said she deserved someone who would build a life with her, not just alongside her. Then I looked at Brendan. I've been thinking, I said, in the same calm voice I'd used in the lobby for 3 months, about the future, about all the decisions a couple has to make together, where to live, what to prioritize, what to build. I paused. Brendan, I'm curious, have you and Joanna talked about where you see yourselves living long-term? Any big changes on the horizon? The backyard was quiet in that way a backyard gets when people sense something under the surface of a conversation. Brendan smiled, measured. We've talked a little about it, he said. Still figuring things out. Calgary came to mind, I said. Is that still something you're considering? The smile stayed, but something behind it didn't. I mean, it's crossed my mind professionally, he said. Nothing decided. I looked at Joanna. She had gone very still. Nothing decided, I repeated. When did you two start talking about it? There was a pause that was several seconds longer than it should have been. We've discussed the general idea, Brendan said. Joanna turned to look at him. Not at me. At him. We've talked about you having ambitions, she said. And her voice was careful in the way her mother's voice used to get careful. We haven't talked about Calgary specifically. I didn't know Calgary was specific. It's just one option, he said. Did you look at apartments? She asked. I sat down. I don't know the exact sequence of what happened over the next 15 minutes because I was no longer driving the conversation. That was Joanna's now. She asked him, quietly and precisely, about Calgary, about the timeline, about the conversation he'd had with Rod from acquisitions, about the 2-bedroom apartment with the home office. I don't know how she knew about Rod. I don't know what other fragments had been reaching her. Perhaps through a different route, perhaps through her own instincts about a man she'd been watching for months, with the kind of attention you pay to someone you're deciding whether to trust with your life. Brendan answered some questions. He deflected others. He said she knew he was ambitious. He said he'd meant to bring it up properly. He said the timing had never seemed right. She said, the timing has never seemed right to tell me where you plan to live. His parents looked at their shoes. Her friends looked at the string lights. I looked at the citronella candle. I think, Joanna said, in a voice so steady it reminded me of her mother making a difficult clinical decision, that I need to think about this. She didn't make a scene. She didn't cry in front of 40 people. She thanked everyone for coming. She hugged Brendan's mother, who seemed mortified on everyone's behalf, and she walked me to my car. She wasn't wearing the ring. I'm not sure when she'd taken it off. We stood by my car for a while. It was a warm evening. The kind of May evening that smells like the whole year is just beginning. You knew, she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was just a statement of fact. I work in his building, I said. I've been working there since January. She stared at me. He never recognized you. No, I said. She thought about that for a moment. Did you know when I introduced you? I suspected. I wasn't certain. She was quiet for a long time. Why didn't you tell me? I thought about Carol. I thought about the young man Joanna was 22. I thought about everything Carol had known about our daughter that I'd had to learn more slowly. Because you needed to hear it from him, I said. Not from me. If I'd told you, you would have gone to him and he would have explained and minimized, and you would have had to decide whether to believe him or believe your father. That's not a fair position to put you in. She didn't say anything. I'm sorry I didn't find a better way, I said. I've been thinking about it for 2 months and I couldn't find one. She looked at the street for a moment. Then she looked at me. People who don't see service workers, she said. That's a thing. That tells you something about a person. Yes, I said. It does. She hugged me, hard, the way she used to hug me when she was small and something had frightened her. I held on. "I'm okay," she said into my shoulder. "I know you are," I said. "You're your mother's daughter." She pulled back and looked at me, and she had that complicated expression people have when something is both terrible and clarifying at the same time. "Were you going to keep working there?" she asked. "I think I'll put in my notice," I said. "I've been thinking about volunteering at the community center in Dundas. They need someone for their morning programs. Retired tradespeople teaching practical skills to kids." She almost smiled. "That sounds like you. Your mother always said I was better face to face than behind a desk." She laughed. It was small, but it was real, and it was hers. We said goodnight. I drove home on the 403, the spring dark settling over the escarpment, the radio on low. I thought about Carol. I thought about how she would have handled all of this better than I had, and faster than I had, and with considerably more grace than I had. But I also thought, Joanna saw it for herself. No one took that from her. There are things you cannot give your children. You cannot give them the ability to see clearly when they are in love. You cannot give them the wisdom they will only earn through their own disappointments. You cannot protect them from every person who will look at their life and see only what fits into his. What you can do is stay present. Stay quiet when quiet is right. Say the one true thing at the one right moment and then get out of the way. That's what I learned from 31 years of engineering and 40 years of being married to Carol and 3 months of sitting behind a desk that a man walked past every single morning without once thinking to look up. Some people see everything. Some people see nothing but themselves. And in the end, that difference has a way of making itself known.